Hi everyone, I'm Nicole Dynan and I'm the owner and director of the Good Nutrition Company, and Marie has asked me to share some of my practical tips with you for telehealth success. So let's get started. So firstly, I wanted to cover some of my background just to let you know my experience in telehealth so you know why I'm doing this webinar, and then talk through some benefits and challenges that I find with running telehealth service. Some of the setup logistics, also some of my tips for scheduling for success, which I think is probably one of the key things that I find can make or break a telehealth service. A little bit about patient interactions and then interactions with some of your referrers. Then I'll talk a little bit about payments and give you some important links at the end where you can get more information. So what I will cover today will be based on my general experience with my telehealth service. So I've been running that for about the last 7 to 8 years. I'll give you some of the practical tips for getting started, and also the useful links and references for more detailed information if you'd like to look up more about what I talk about throughout the course of the webinar today. Also, I just wanted to stress that this information is based on my experience, so it's not the be all and end all. It may or may not work for your telehealth service, but it may just give you some food for thought to determine whether or not telehealth could be right for your particular practice. And I'll also use telehealth a little bit interchangeably for phone and video service. So traditionally it does refer to video conference services, but I just use it to generally refer to both unless otherwise specified. So a bit about my background. I run a corporate and private practice telehealth service, as well as a private practice face-to-face service, although not at the moment. And my team and I have conducted over 15,000 telehealth consultations to date. So that's about 2,000 a year or so over the last 7 years. And the majority of those have been funded by corporate employers, and some also through private billing. So I've done no bulk billing up until the last couple of weeks, like most of you, I'm sure, as well. And I just wanted to emphasize also that the majority of our telehealth service has been phone-based service. So that's really where most of my experience lies, is working a telehealth service via the phone. So I very much wholeheartedly agree with this statement from DAA to say that telephone and video conference delivered nutrition interventions are just as effective as face-to-face appointments. And I would wholeheartedly agree with that. And I'd sometimes say that they can be more effective even than face-to-face interactions. And that might become clear when I go to the next slide. So some of the benefits I've found of having a telehealth service as part of my business is that firstly, it does give me diversity in my business. So when, you know, the global pandemic of COVID-19 occurred, my business really feels like it hasn't skipped a beat, because it does have so many arms to it, and the diversity of my business and having the telehealth component particularly has allowed me to continue that service without too much interruption. It also allows me to generate additional rent-free income, which is such a bonus, particularly last year leading into Christmas. You know, I could really boost my income up just by advertising my service more, getting more people phoning in and booking up for my private telehealth service at home. It also gives me flexibility with my clients and also myself. So having kids at home, you know, that sort of thing as well. So sometimes it's not always ideal to be working in those hours where people need you, like after school. And so sometimes I do telehealth consultations in the evening when the kids are in bed. So it just gives me more flexibility to do things like that. And this is the part I was talking about before. I really find that the telehealth service, particularly the phone service, is really a judgment-free zone from the client's perspective. So the fact that they're not being viewed, particularly if they've got a weight issue or they're a little bit self-conscious of things like that, they feel like they don't have that person sitting in front of them judging them, even if you're not judging them. that perception might be there. So it really can be very valuable and beneficial, particularly to patients who are trying to lose weight, who feel a little bit self-conscious talking to an allied health professional. And you can operate the service from anywhere. So even when we go on holidays and things like that, it's really easy for me to continue my business and do a few client calls if I so choose to do that, as long as the phone or internet service is reliable where we're going. So it is quite flexible in that regard. In saying all of these things as benefits for the telehealth service, one of the key things I think that we must all keep in the front of our minds is the nutrition care considerations for the client. So really that's the biggest benefit, is being able to provide that ongoing, especially in a situation like we have right now where we're unable to provide that service as seamlessly face-to-face. We can definitely continue their care over video or phone. So some of the key challenges to consider are definitely the setup. So if you haven't done private practice before, but you really want to give telehealth a go, then setting up a provider number, getting all of those logistics around that sorted out, setting up a customer relationship management system so you're securely storing patient information and your notes and data. Setting up a platform that you feel secure with in terms of your video conferencing, all those sorts of things. And you may need to just do everything yourself. So being prepared to work hard to get that set up right in the first instance will definitely pay off longer term. Client adaptability may also be a bit of a challenge, particularly if you've got elderly clients who whose hearing is a little bit limited and they find it difficult over the phone or are not familiar with video conference type facilities. Or maybe you work with athletes who need anthropometry more often, that sort of thing. So it's really going to come down to the type of client you work with and whether or not this sort of medium is suitable to them. Technology issues as well. So it seems to be a little bit more stable at the moment, but right at the beginning when we all went into lockdown, I definitely found video conferencing was very crackly and unreliable. So that's always something to consider. And then bad debts as well. So depending on how you decide to take payments, that can be something that you may need to consider, how you'd recoup payments if the client or the patient doesn't pay in a timely fashion. So what to expect? Always expect the unexpected when it comes to telehealth. So when we first started our corporate service, we were absolutely exhausted. So I would say expect to be exhausted. Siri, I'm not talking to you. Sorry, guys. Make sure you've got your phone switched off, by the way. Expect to be exhausted. So yeah, we were doing 10 clients back to back each day, and it was just a change of operation, mode of operation, and it was really quite exhausting to be talking to that many people about their nutrition. So you could definitely expect that. Expect your listening skills to be heightened, particularly if you are doing a phone-based service, because that is your only connection with the patient, is your auditory connection. Your concentration skills to be extended, because you definitely have to concentrate harder. Sometimes the audio or the visual is not 100%, and so you're concentrating more to make sure you pick up what they're saying and trying to see them, that sort of thing. But a positive out of that, I definitely found my consultations became more efficient, and maybe that's just because particularly over the phone, you don't have the body language cues that you may otherwise have in a face-to-face consultation. So I found it to be more efficient in terms of time. In terms of logistics, some of the other telehealth webinars that have been put out there already talk about the room setup, which is really important, the lighting. You want to make sure it looks professional, but more than anything, I think you just want to make sure your camera is at eye level so that you're not looking down on the client or you're not looking up to the client necessarily. So just making sure that feels good. Be video conference ready, look as if you're going to work, even if you've got, you know, your runners on the bottom or whatever. You want to make sure you look professional from the waist up. You want to get out of your pajamas. You just want to be in that mode where you feel like you're actually still at work, because we are still working even though everyone's working from home. You don't want to fall into that sort of complacency of feeling like, well, they're at home, I'm at home, I can wear my hoodie, you know, or whatever. I just feel like, you know, you always still need to be looking professional. You are a professional, you're charging for your service. Make sure you're looking like you're in your practice. Microphone quality, really, really important. If you're doing a phone service and you're using your mobile, please don't do it on speaker. That sound quality is really hard to hear on the other end. Make sure you've got a good headset. And if you are using your mobile, set it to no caller ID so you don't get any unexpected callbacks. Make sure you have a private space, a closed door. You don't want your housemate or, you know, walking past in a towel, or your kids running through fighting, or the dog flying through barking in the background. You want to make sure that, you know, you look like you're in an office space. And you also want to be really feeling comfortable with your CRM system and your video conference platform, so that there's no fumbling around in front of the client. You're as efficient as you can be. You're taking your notes as you go, so that you don't have to come back and do all of that later. In terms of scheduling the client appointments, like I said at the start, this is one of the things that I feel is really most important. And it sort of relates to the fact that it just helps you maximize your time as well. So if you open up big blocks of time, a client might just book right in the middle of that and not leave enough space either side for someone else to book an initial appointment. So the way I get around that is I just open up the slots on my calendar that correspond with the time that I use for my appointments. So I will book them in with a gap in between of 15 minutes, just so it gives me a buffer to either catch up with notes or write a doctor's letter or just take a breather, or even just catch up on technology issues. So if there's been a glitch when I first got online with the client, I've got a bit of catch-up time and I'm not then late for the next client. So that 15-minute buffer I would highly, highly recommend. Also, less is more. So when I was talking about the corporate service before, I said we opened up 2 half days initially. So I do that in my private practice telehealth as well. So I open up less appointments, but I do give a few options. And then if they fill up, I'll open up more, so that you know, I'm not just blocking out all of my time throughout the week in the hope that I'll get someone booking in randomly. I'll give them a couple of choices, limit it to 2 half days, and then I can extend it if need be. And if you are doing a full day, I'd highly recommend scheduling a lunch break, because you will absolutely need it if you've been full that morning. So now I just wanted to talk about the patient interaction and what happens sort of before, during, and after when you're on a telehealth consult with your patient. So pre-consult, for me, the bookings either come in online. So I've set up through my CRM, there's a link that's I've put on my website. So the booking goes straight into my Galaxy customer relationship management system. So it comes into that calendar. Or it comes via the surgery. So I just have to log on to the surgery computer on the days that I know I've got time allocated to them, and make sure, you know, what appointments I have. Then I send everybody a pre-visit data collection form. So I'm looking to get things like their email address, their phone number, their Medicare details, a bit about their diet history, their goals, their exercise, things like that. So I send that out, and now I also send a copy of the consent form for telehealth. I put a link into my privacy policy, which is on my website, and I also send a copy of my fees and cancellation policy, because I think that's also a requirement now for the Medicare bulk billing. And I request any blood tests or exam results or referrals that they may have, for them to send those to me as well. And then I set up a reminder appointment in the system also, so that I have less cancellations as a result. During the consultation, I think it's really important to ask permission to take notes. So I always ask permission, and then I advise the patient that I've actually started to take notes from about to start taking notes. So if they hear me typing, they know what that is, because I think there's nothing worse than if you're on the phone or a video conference and you hear someone typing, you think that they're doing something else and they're not paying attention to what you're saying. So I always let them know that that's what's happening. I also, excuse me, record consent for the telehealth consultation in my notes, even though I've sent that consent form out. It's just another backup for that. And I establish a plan for technology failure, which means I just basically say to them, like, if the call drops out, I'll try and call you back. If that fails, then I'll try and call you mobile. Can I just check I've got the right mobile number? So that way you're not going to miss that consultation. If the technology fails you, you want to make sure you're getting that consultation in and the payment for it. After the consultation, I rebook them straight away. I've got them on the line, they've got the calendar, might as well do it straight away. I then follow up and send any emails or resources that we may have shared throughout the course of that consultation, and affect payment. So whether that's just clicking the button in Halaxy, the CRM I use, or whether I send an invoice. I use Xero as my accounting software. In either case, I just make sure that that payment happens at that time, so it's not forgotten about. So after the consultation as well, and that 15-minute buffer I was telling you about, so that's really great to sort of catch up and make sure you've got the doctor's letters done, and think about how you're going to send those now. Are you just going to continue to post those, or have you got a secure email system that you use, or maybe you've got a fax at home. I don't know if anyone still uses that, but think about how you're going to communicate with them. Obviously, we can't just send doctor's letters over standard email for security and privacy reasons. So think about whether or not you're going to invest in a secure email, or you're happy just to post. Excuse me. Sorry guys, I've been doing way too many webinars. So this is just an example telehealth workflow that I put together that pretty much outlines what I do. So if it comes via my home or website, the client books online, whereas if it comes via one of my surgeries, then I just log into the remote access that they've given me so I can check the calendar there. In any case, I just pop the client into my CRM calendar. So everyone's in the same place. All their details are then entered into my system so that I can then send out the same information to everyone: the pre-visit form, the consent form, the privacy policy, the billing and cancellation information. Then I go ahead and conduct the appointment and then do the follow-up. And then in terms of billing, if it's come through the surgery, then I just provide the billing details to the surgery and they take the payment. Otherwise, I do the payment, as I mentioned before, via the CRM or via invoice. So just a little bit more on payments and a few things to consider. So are you going to advertise your fees? And I'll show you on the next slide what I do. Will you collect your payments before or after the consultation? And what are some of the pros and cons of that? So if you collect it before, obviously you're not going to have any debt issues, but maybe one of the cons of collecting it before is that sometimes the consultation can go longer than the client has booked and you've charged them for. So will you charge them more for that, or will you be comfortable to do that? So that's something I'd always consider. If you've got their details, their credit card details stored, you can just as easily affect the payment after the consultation, and then you can charge them the correct amount based on the time, or you can send an invoice out. But that would be probably the con there would be that they don't pay that, particularly now if they've got a lot of other expenses going on. That might be a little bit risky. So you just got to weigh up how you're going to do it. Will you take the charge that your CRM system applies for taking the credit card payment, as opposed to maybe not getting paid if you're sending out invoices, or are you less worried about that? So just weighing those things up. In terms of Medicare payments, it's really easy to do that through a lot of the CRMs as well. So you just have to put the referrer details in, and then you can just literally click a button. And as long as you've got all of your provider details in there, That can just be done, you know, very simply. Sometimes the patient may need to sign a form, which is a release of funds form, which you can just email to them. They can sign and send back. Or alternatively, you can invoice the client and then they can claim it back from Medicare. In terms of advertising your fees, I do that because I think it then just allows patients to book online. But I think you just have to be quite clear. So for example, here I always put, well, at the moment, I've got up there telehealth initial appointment, that it's private, the time that I'm allocating, and then my fee. And then I've got the telehealth Medicare appointments, and I've just put in that it requires a GP referral, and it's a much lesser time, and then the charge there. So then patients, I think, are more likely to be able to choose the right appointment to book if you're obviously not there. And you can always follow up with them if they've booked that one of those Medicare appointments, just to make sure they have got the referral. So in terms of Medicare rebates, this is the sort of information I think most people have received now, but I've just put it up just for thoroughness in this presentation. So from the 6th of April, we now know that telehealth services provided by Medicare for children under 16, concession card holders, and those vulnerable to COVID-19 are required to be bulk billed. And those vulnerable to COVID-19 are pretty much anyone with a chronic health condition. So if you're a bit worried or unsure about that, there's a link there that you can click and get more information. And you don't need to get a new Medicare EPC referral for the client if they've already got sessions remaining on their existing one. In terms of the item numbers, it's really important to note that they're different if it's video conference or if it's telephone. So that's the last two columns there. So for most people, I think it would be the chronic disease row, that top row, so the 93000 for video conference or 93013 for telephone. And then if you're working with Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders or eating disorder clients, there's some other item numbers also to consider. In terms of private health rebates, many private health funds now are providing rebates for the telehealth services, so there's a lot more information there, and you can click on that link and get everything you need. I always recommend that my client checks with their health fund to put the onus back on them also to double check, because everyone's policies are so different. DVA have also agreed to honour telehealth services from the 1st of April through to the 30th of September with a bunch of item numbers. So if you see DVA clients, please look into that a little bit further. And those important links that I mentioned before, so any recent updates, you can click on here, and if they don't come through, if you can't click on them through the slideshow, I'll make sure Marie makes them available to you on the website. So setting up, if you haven't got a provider number, setting up a provider number, and don't forget you need an online claiming provider agreement, which basically just gives the government access to your bank details so they can pay you. So you need that in addition to your provider number. Marie has very kindly done a video conferencing software comparison and a practice management software comparison. So having a look at those to determine which platforms you think suit your business best. The client consent form, an example from DAA, is on that little link. I couldn't find it for ages, but you just scroll to the end of the document, it's actually staring you in the face. And for more information, click on the Telehealth Clinical Consultations document. So in summary, telehealth is a new opportunity, I think, for all of us as dietitians, but you need to consider whether it's right for your specific situation and also your specific clients. Client care and the outcomes for your clients really are the priority at the end of the day. And as I said at the start, I truly believe we can achieve the same health outcomes via video and phone as what we can face-to-face. The only thing we really can't do is weigh and measure. And sometimes clients don't want you to do that anyway, so it's not a showstopper in my opinion. I would definitely recommend practicing your opening spiel, or just being thinking about what you're going to say to your clients if you haven't done any telehealth consultations before, because it's just really important to make them feel comfortable when you first get on that call, that phone call or video call, just to be warm and welcoming, and help them feel at ease about this new world order that we find ourselves in. Get familiar with your technology, and please ask for help if you're struggling. There's so many people willing to help. There's so many resources now, both on Dietitian Connection and DAA for updates. And there's also the Dietitian in Private Practice Facebook Messenger group. So please feel free to join that, because all of the latest updates in this space are posted there. You're not alone. Everyone's going through this, so we'll get through it together. And if I can help anyone, please feel free to reach out and connect. I'm more than happy to help in any way that I can. I hope that was useful, guys. Take care. Hope to see you all soon. Bye.